I work nights at a data center outside Milton Keynes. It's not glamorous. Basically, I'm there to make sure nothing catches fire and to reset servers if something crashes. The pay's decent, and I'm usually alone from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., which suits me fine. I listen to podcasts, do my rounds every 2 hours, and mostly sit in the control room watching 8 monitors cycle through camera feeds. Last Tuesday started normal. I clocked in, got the handover from Gary. He mentioned one of the motion sensors in Block C had been glitchy all week, probably a spider or dust. He'd logged it, but maintenance wouldn't come until Friday. Fine. I'd worked here 18 months, and false alarms happened. Around midnight, I was halfway through a true crime podcast when the motion alert for C7 went off. Which that's a sealed server room. You need 2 key cards and a PIN to get in, and there's no windows. I checked the camera feed. Nothing, just rows of server racks and that bluish LED glow they all have. I reset the alert and went back to my podcast. 20 minutes later, C9 triggered, then C4, then C11. All in Block C, all sealed rooms, all showing nothing on camera. I paused my podcast. The sensors are motion activated and they're supposed to be sensitive, but this felt off. I decided to do my rounds early. Block C is the oldest section. The lighting's harsher and there's this constant hum from the cooling system that gets under your skin if you're there too long. I scanned my card at the main door and walked the corridor. Everything looked fine. Checked each door, all locked, all access logs clear on the little screens beside them. No one had entered any of those rooms since 4 p.m. I went back to the control room. The alerts had stopped. I made a note in the log and tried to settle back in, but I couldn't focus on the podcast anymore. I kept glancing at the monitors at 1:47 a.m. I remember because I just checked my phone. Every single motion sensor in Block C went off at once. 12 rooms simultaneously. I stared at the monitors. Nothing, no movement, just empty corridors and server racks. Then the lights in Block C went out. Not flickering, just off. The cameras switched to night vision mode. Everything went grainy and green. I tried the light controls. Nothing. I checked the power logs. Block C was still drawing normal power. The lights were off, but everything else was running. I should have called someone. My supervisor, maybe building security. But honestly, I felt stupid. What was I going to say? The lights are off, but the power's on and some motion sensors went off? I'd worked in IT support before this and I knew how that sounded. I decided to go back down there. I took the big mag light from the equipment cupboard and my phone for backup. The corridor lights were working fine until I reached Block C's entrance. The door was still locked. I scanned in. The main corridor was pitch black, except for my torch beam. The hum from the cooling system sounded louder in the dark. I walked slowly, checking each door again. Still locked. Still no access logs. Then I heard it, a rhythmic beeping. Faint, coming from further down the corridor. I followed it to C7, the room Gary had mentioned. The beeping was coming from inside. I checked the access log screen. No entries, but the screen was showing the door as unsealed. Not open, but the magnetic lock was disengaged. I didn't have authorization to enter C7 without logging it and getting remote approval from my supervisor. But the door was already unsealed. I pushed it. It opened. The beeping was louder inside. It was coming from one of the server racks at the back. I swept my torch across the room. Everything looked normal. Rows of blinking lights, cables, the usual setup. I walked toward the beeping. There was a laptop on the floor between 2 racks. Not one of ours. Ours are all logged and locked away. This was personal, maybe 5 years old, silver, open, but the screen was black. The beeping was coming from it. I crouched down. There was a USB stick in one of the ports and a phone charging cable plugged into the laptop, trailing off behind the rack. Music, I didn't touch it. I took a photo with my phone and backed out of the room. The door sealed behind me with a heavy click. I went straight back to the control room and called my supervisor. It rang 6 times before he answered, groggy and annoyed. I explained what I'd found. He went quiet for a moment, then told me to lock down Block C entirely, override all the access codes, and not to go back in. He said he'd call it in and someone would be there within the hour. I did what he said, locked down the block, made detailed notes in the log, saved the photo. The motion sensor stopped triggering. The lights came back on by themselves about 10 minutes later. 2 men in suits arrived at 3:30 a.m. with building security. They went into Block C with some kind of equipment case and were in there for nearly an hour. Or when they came out, they didn't speak to me, just had a brief conversation with my supervisor on the phone. I was told to delete the photo from my phone and not to discuss it with anyone. They took the laptop and left. Gary didn't come in for his shift the next night, or the night after. I asked my supervisor and he said Gary no longer worked here. When I pushed, he told me to drop it. I've been doing my rounds like normal since then. Block C is fine now. No more motion alerts, no issues. But I checked the access logs for the week before it happened. Gary scanned into C 7-11 times in 3 days, always between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. He'd worked here for 9 years. I have no idea what he was doing or who those men were. I've started looking for a new job. I don't like working somewhere that tells me to forget things I've seen. And I keep thinking about that charging cable trailing behind the server rack. It was plugged into something. I didn't look to see what. The visitor log sits in a metal clipboard by the entrance. Anyone coming in has to sign. Name, company, time in, time out. Basic stuff. I check it maybe twice a shift, just to make sure contractors aren't skipping the safety briefing. I work admin at a haulage depot outside Doncaster. It's me, 2 dispatch lads, and whoever's driving that day. Quiet job. I handle invoices, compliance paperwork, that sort of thing. The office is a prefab stuck to the side of the main warehouse. Single window, radiator that rattles. I'm usually alone after 4 when dispatch clocks off. It was a Tuesday. I'd been updating some manifests and went to grab my coat around 5:30. The log was on the desk. Someone must have brought it in earlier. I flipped through it out of habit. 3 names. Normal. Then I saw the 4th entry. It was my name. My actual name, when signed in at 14:22. Company field said personal. Timeout was blank. Address column, where you're supposed to write your employer or reason for visit, had my home address, full postcode. I stared at it for a bit. It didn't make sense. I'd been there all day. I hadn't signed in. No one signs in if they work there. And why would anyone write my address? I thought maybe one of the lads was messing about. We don't really do pranks. But maybe someone was bored. I took a photo of it on my phone and sent it to the group chat. Anyone know what this is about? No replies. They'd both left hours ago. I locked up and went home. Kept thinking about it on the drive. It felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on why. I live in a flat above a chippy. Ground floor's the shop, first floor's me and one other tenant. I don't know them well. Then I checked my door when I got in. Locked. Everything normal. Next morning, I got in early. The log was back by the entrance, clipped to its usual spot. I checked the previous day's entries. My name was still there. I flipped forward. Today's page was blank. I put it back and tried to forget about it. Around lunchtime, a delivery driver came in. I watched him sign. Normal. I went back to my desk. An hour later, I checked the log again. My name was there. Same handwriting. Signed in at 11:50. Address field. My home address again. Timeout blank. I hadn't left the office. The driver had been the only person in. I stood there holding the clipboard, trying to make sense of it. The handwriting wasn't mine. It was neat, deliberate. Whoever wrote it knew my address, knew my name. And they were doing it while I was in the building. I called one of the dispatch lads, asked if he'd seen anyone hanging around yesterday or this morning. He said no. Asked why. I didn't really know how to explain it without sounding paranoid, so I just said I thought someone had been messing with the log. He laughed and said it was probably a contractor having a laugh. I wanted to believe that. I stayed at my desk the rest of the day, didn't go out for a break, kept the office door locked. I could see the entrance from my window if I leaned back. No one came in. At 4:30, dispatch left. I waited until 5, then checked the log again. Another entry. My name, 1635. Same address. Timeout, still blank. I'd been watching the door. No one had come in. I took the log back to my office and locked the door. I didn't know what else to do. I thought about calling the police. But what would I even say? Someone's writing my address in a visitor log? It sounded stupid. I sat there until 6. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. Just said, "Still there?" I didn't reply. I grabbed my coat and the log and left. Locked everything. Drove home faster than I should have. When I got to my flat, there was a printed sheet of paper taped to my door. It was a copy of the visitor log. My entries circled in red pen. At the bottom, someone had written, "You should sign out." I pulled it down and went inside. Locked the door. Checked the windows. I don't know how they got my address. Well, obviously they knew it. They'd been writing it down. But seeing it on my actual door made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I called my landlord. Asked if anyone had been asking about me. He said no. I didn't tell him why I was asking. I didn't sleep much that night. Kept thinking about the log, about the text, about the fact that someone had been in the depot, writing my details down, while I was sitting 20 feet away. Next day, I brought the log home with me. Didn't leave it at the depot. Told my boss I needed to work from home for a bit. He wasn't thrilled, but he didn't argue. I haven't been back since. I know that sounds like I'm overreacting. Maybe I am. But the thought of sitting in that office, door locked, watching the entrance, knowing someone's been coming in without me seeing them, I can't do it. I still have the log. I've checked it a few times. No new entries. But I keep thinking about the timeout column. All those entries with my name. None of them signed out. I don't know what that means. I don't think I want to know. The filing cabinet is one of those old metal ones with a barrel lock. I'm the only person with a key. It sits behind my desk in the accounts office on the 3rd floor, and I've been using it for about 2 years now. Nothing fancy, just invoices, receipts, reconciliation sheets, standard stuff. I work for a small logistics company in Slough. We've got maybe 20 staff total, and most of them clock out by 6. I usually stay until 8 or 9, sometimes later if month end's coming up. The building's shared with a few other businesses, but by 7 it's mostly empty. Security patrols maybe once a night, if that. It started 3 weeks ago. I came in on a Tuesday morning and opened the cabinet to file some supplier invoices. There was a note on top of the stack. Just a slip of paper, handwritten in blue biro. It said, "You missed line 23 on the Harwell account." I checked. Line 23 was wrong. Transposed digits, nothing major, but definitely an error. I figured maybe my manager had come in early, noticed it, left a note. Bit odd that she'd have a key and not mention it, but I corrected it and didn't think much more about it. The next week, another note. This time it was on a Thursday. I opened the cabinet to grab some old statements, and there it was, same blue pen, same handwriting. Check the fuel receipts for March. 2 are duplicates. I went through them. She was right. 2 identical receipts, both filed, both paid out. An honest mistake, probably from one of the drivers submitting twice. But now I was uncomfortable. I asked my manager if she'd been leaving notes. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "No key," she said. "Only me." I checked the lock. No scratches, no signs of forcing. I asked the office manager if anyone else had a spare. He said no, and even if they did, why wouldn't they just email me? That's when I started staying later. I wanted to catch whoever it was. I know that sounds stupid, but I was annoyed more than scared at that point. It felt like someone was messing with me. Last Monday I stayed until nearly 10. The cleaners had been and gone. The building was silent except for the heating pipes and the hum of the vending machine down the hall. I locked the cabinet before I went to the bathroom, maybe 2 minutes tops. When I came back, I unlocked it again just to check. Another note. Fresh. The ink still looked wet. "You should go home. It's late." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. I looked around the office. The door was still shut. No one in the corridor. I checked the time on my phone. 22:03. I locked the cabinet, grabbed my coat, and left. I didn't tell anyone. What would I even say? Someone's leaving helpful accounting notes in a locked drawer. It sounds mad. But I started testing it. I'd lock the cabinet, leave the office for 5 minutes, come back and check. Nothing. I'd stay late, work quietly, keep an ear out for footsteps. Nothing. It only seemed to happen when I wasn't paying attention, when I was in the bathroom, or down in the print room, or on a call in the meeting room. Last Thursday, I tried something different. I put a sheet of paper on top of the files, blank except for a single question I wrote in the center. "Who are you?" I locked it. Stayed in the office. Worked for 2 hours straight. He didn't leave my desk once. At 10:30, I unlocked it. The paper was still there. But now there was a reply, written underneath my question in that same blue pen. "Someone who used to sit where you're sitting." I went cold. I don't know why that got to me more than the others, but it did. I looked up the previous person in my role. Her name was Angela. She'd left the company about 3 years ago, just before I started. I found her on LinkedIn. Still alive. Working for a firm in Reading. Definitely not sneaking into the office at night. I called the office manager the next morning. Told him I thought someone had been in the building after hours. He said he'd checked the sign-in logs and the key register. Nothing. No one had signed in. No missing keys. I asked if anyone had died in the office. He said no. But one woman had a breakdown a few years back. Worked in accounts. Stopped coming in, just stopped. They'd had to clear her desk. He didn't remember her name. I didn't go back in last night. I'm supposed to finish the quarterly reconciliation by Monday, but I can't. I keep thinking about that note. Someone who used to sit where you're sitting. I looked up the employment records this afternoon. Quietly, didn't tell anyone. Angela wasn't the first person in my role. There was someone before her, a woman named Diane. She left in 2019, no forwarding details, no exit interview. I called HR. They said she'd resigned, effective immediately. No notice period, no explanation. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The cabinet's still locked. I've still got the only key, but I'm not opening it again. I've been moving files to a different drawer, one without a lock. I'll finish the reconciliation from home if I have to. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe someone's playing a prank and I'm just too tired to see it. But I keep thinking about that last note, the one that told me to go home. I think I'm going to listen.